We're going to finish up our new site number 6, and this one is, it's a little bit more difficult than the other ones, but not by much. So the first things first, I'm just going to clone it down, which I've already done. I've got my completed new site 5 from yesterday. Again, you can find that all in the branches. I put up my solution each and every day. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this in over here. At this particular point, I'm just going to run npm install and then npm start just to get everything loaded in. Now this may take a little while, so in the meantime, we're going to just kind of go over some of the high-level objectives that we've got. So new site number 5, all we did was we wired up the login page. We just have a login page that has a form on it. We're able to get the content from that form. But now we want to, whenever you submit the login, I'm going to post those credentials and see if I'm able to log in or if I'm not able to log in. I'm going to update it so that the nav bar at the very top has a login link if you're not logged in and a logout link if you are logged in. And I'm only going to show the add an article link when you're logged in because you shouldn't be able to add things unless you are logged in. With a lot of single page apps, think like Instagram or Facebook, the web flow usually looks something like this. You log into the page, and after you hit submit, your credentials are going to be checked. If you're good to go, they're going to give you a token back, and then once you have that token, you can basically do anything that you want because every single subsequent request that you make has that particular token. You can think of a token as like you go to a carnival, you pay your entrance fee, and then they stamp your hand. As long as you've got that stamp on your hand, you can go anywhere that you'd like within the carnival. As long as before you go on the rise, they're going to say, show me your stamp. You got the stamp. You can do anything you want at that particular point. When you leave for the day, let's say they take a wipe and they wipe it off. You can no longer go back in and do anything that you want. But as long as you've got that stamp on your hand, you're good to go. And based off of that, similarly, you log in and you get your stamp, right? The little thing that you mark on the kid's hands. And then if you've got that stamp, you can do anything that you'd like that requires you to log in. So adding an article, deleting an article, all of those types of things are available to you. So we've done the initial setup, and we're going to be creating another API. We've been doing only one so far, using just the article, and now we want to log our user in. Before I get started, I'm just going to run npm run update app, and it's going to copy a few things over from the old one into this one. I'm going to just run npm update app. This is just a small little script that I wrote inside of package.json. There's that update app right over here. I'm just moving some files from like a staging area, not really a staging area, from a temporary folder into the actual thing. And the main one we want to take a look at is this users API.js. So I'm just going to go users API.js. It's found right over here. All I've done so far is I've created a quick login that takes in some credentials, and I will do something with it later, and I'm going to export it here at the very bottom. Let's run npm start. We're going to fix all the bugs, and we'll see how far we get. So we've got our news app number 5. Everything looks pretty good. Let's flip back over here. Probably going to tell me that something is wrong. I think. There we go. All right, so everything's loaded up. There's a couple warnings, and we're just going to fix this warning so we don't see this anymore. First thing says there should be no space before equals and no space after equals. So if I go inside of add article page, line number 39, so add article. Line number 39, there's a, looks like it was auto-formatted by Visual Studio Code. Save that, and you can kind of see now I've got compiled successfully, no warnings whatsoever. We're going to tackle this first little bit right here. So there's an email and password that's associated with today's challenge. It's just john@doe.com and OpenSesame. This is the only set of credentials that we can use right here. we're going to create a function called users_api.login, and we're going to pass in the credentials with their email and password that they enter. It should be almost identical to the add article function. So with that, let's jump into article API, and we're just going to do this add article down at the bottom. I'm just going to grab this, grab the whole thing, jump inside of users API, and just dump it in here. They said it was almost the same thing, so I'm just going to take the credentials objects and throw it down over here. So I'm making a fetch request to, this is probably the wrong URL. Let's see. A post should be made to this particular URL. So whenever anybody calls the users API, they're going to call the method called login, pass in some credentials. It'll make a fetch request in the background to this particular URL, telling it, hey, this is the content that I'm sending over. It's going to be a post request. And then this is the body. I'm going to take the credentials object that I created and turn it into JSON. After that, I'm going to do a .then. I'm going to get it back a response, and I'm going to turn that response into JSON. There's a test. I believe it is broken. It's possible that it's broken, but we're just, if you want to try it out, and if it's broken, call me over. But if not, we're just going to skip this section and move on. So all we've done so far is we created another file called users_api.js. We have one called articles API. This is the way that we interact with searching articles and grabbing a certain article by an ID or a section or adding an article. And when we log in, this is the method that we're going to be using to call to an API. So inside of React, whenever you need to call out to anything, it's going to be in its own separate API file. If I'm going to be doing stuff with articles, it all goes inside of an articles API file. If I'm doing stuff with products or books or something like that, it would be books_api.js. All the things related to books and APIs would go inside of there. Next, we're going to be getting a token that comes back when we sign in correctly. Specifically, this weird nonsensical looking string that has the key of ID. So we still want to use this login, like inside of the login page, but we need to store the response inside of app.js. Remember, we said at the very top of things, we want to know if a user is logged in. If a user is logged in, I want to show the logout, and I want to show them that they can add an article. If they're not logged in, they can't do anything. And because login page only takes care of login page, we need to move it up all the way to the top to app.js, because that's where it's going to keep track of all of the state. So we need to do a few things. One, we need to create a class method in app.js. It takes a user object as a parameter and sets it into the state. Remember, app.js is the top level, and then it passes stuff all the way down to other places. And then B, pass that method into login page so that when I log in, it goes all the way back up to app.js. So first things first, I'm going to have a handle login method that goes on app.js. So here, I'm on app.js. Remember, this is the top level. This is where everything starts. I'm going to have a handle login. I'm going to take a user. I believe it is going to just set the state of user to user. This dot set state user. Again, app.js holds the state that I'm going to be passing into different components, because I think in order to figure out like if I should show one thing or another inside the navigation bar, I need to pass stuff into the navigation bar. And the only time that I pass things in is from app into AppNav over here. So this is the first thing we need to do. Second, inside of, we need to pass that method into loginpage.js. So again, app.js has this login. We need to pass this whole function down from here, down into this login page. Now, when you're doing just component, you can take a look over here inside of the login page. There is no, I'm not passing down any sort of props. Like the word props or properties never shows up on this particular page. So instead of doing component, because that's when I'm not passing anything down, I actually need to create something called render. So again, component is when you don't have to pass down props. Render is when you do have to pass down props. I believe we have it over here. I'll grab this real quick. We'll figure out what just happened. So I want to, okay. So component, again, I'm not passing down any properties. Render, I am passing down properties. So whenever anybody makes a request to /login, I'm going to render the render login page constant that I create up here. It takes in props. Props has the ability to get all of the history and all of the, it basically has access to all of the history and other things that are available to the top level app.js. All I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a login page, same thing as before, pass in the history and pass in the handle login. You can kind of see all of these. I'm not passing down any props. Whenever I need to pass down props to a page, I need to call this render and create a individual constant with all of the props inside of it. So at this particular point, let's see what else is next. So whenever anybody makes a GET request to /login, render login page is going to fire off, which opens up a new login page. So now we have access to this handle login. Whenever I hit handle login, all it's going to do is set the state of app.js's user into the user that's being passed back. So taking a look over here into login page, I have a form that just shows up. It looks a little something like this. Whenever I fill out my two things and I hit submit, I have access to both of those things. So first things first, remember at the very beginning we said we're going to create a constant called credentials. I'll just call it credentials for now. And it has an email, which I believe is equal to this first thing. And then we have a password, which is equal to the second thing. From here, I need to make a request over to the users API in order to log in. So I know I'm going to do users API.login with these credentials. But in order to use the users API over here, I need to import it. Import users API from, I believe I go out one level to the API to users API.js. So once I log in, I want to do two things. One, I want to make sure that user is passed all the way back up to my app.js. And then second, I want to redirect that person. So first things first, once I finish this, I'm going to get back a JSON response. First things first, I'm going to do this.props.handle login with this JSON. And then I'm going to do this.props.history.push. I'm going to send you to just the home page. If I've wired this all up correctly, I'm going to go here. I'm actually going to open up a brand new localhost 3000. This. I'm going to log in with john@doe.com. I'm going to do open sesame. And remember, if this goes well, if I'm able to log in correctly, it's going to send me to the home page. And just like that, I am logged in at this particular point. But I do want to see what the user looks like. So I'm going to go back to app.js. Inside of this render over here, I'm just going to console log this.state.user. I believe I'm still logged in, so I should be able to could not get property user of null. This.state. Okay, hold on. Let me log in one more time. Everything is broken. Cannot read user property of null on line 18. This is this.state.user. We'll just do if this.state.user. We'll throw this in here. Still cannot read user. Let's do constructor, mix in some props. We're going to super the props. And then we're going to do this.state equals nothing for now. Does this make a difference? All right. So I'm just going to do John at do.com with open sesame. And it returns me an error of some sort. It just says there's an error 400. Well, it's username or email is required. Let's take a look. So let's start from the beginning. We start with app.js. I go to /login, so I render out this thing right over here, which is a login page. I'm passing in two props. One's history, one's handle login. When I'm here, I am going to, oh, it's because I'm console logging, because I'm stupid. Oops. Try it one more time. That was a pretty big mess up because I forgot I was console logging. So enter John at do.com, open sesame, and then I get this particular thing back. So there's the entire user object response, and this is that little token that I'm trying to get for a little bit later.
Where's this token coming from?
What's that?
Where's the token coming from?
The token is being generated by the API, which we kind of turned into a black box so that you didn't really need to think about it, but it's inside of here. So we created an API for you that just says, like, when I receive an authenticated user and password, I'm going to give back this randomly generated ID number. Okay. So from here, I only want to be able to add an article if I'm authenticated. And I've actually added that little functionality where, let me refresh the page here. Hopefully this goes away. All right, now I don't have anything. So I'm going to add an article without being authenticated, submit, and it's going to blow up and says unsuccessfully submitted because it's a 401 unauthorized. In order to create an article, you need to pass in your token as well. So once we set the user inside of app and we go down to add article, we need to pass down the user's ID. And because we can't use that component anymore, we got to create another one of these. So we're going to, instead of doing render login page, we're going to do render add article page. All right. From here, it's the same thing as before. I'm just going to put the add article page and pass down one prop. I think it's just ID equals this.state.user.id. And then instead of component, I'm just going to do render and do this render article page. So before we do anything else, let's just go to the add article page and see if we can actually pass in this particular thing. So I'm going to pass in this.props.user.id. Actually, I think it's just called ID. Let's, before we do anything, actually, let's just console log this.props. All right, cannot read property ID of undefined on line 35. That's interesting. Let's start all the way over from the beginning. at the home page. I log myself in, john@doe.com. Open Sesame. I'm logged in at this point. I've got this particular thing set inside of my app.js estate. From there, I'm going to click on Add an Article. And you can kind of see this is that Add Article page, that console log. I still have access to that ID. When I make a request at this point to create a new article, it says unsuccessfully submitted. Something blows up. So again, I have access to that particular user's token. I pass it into article ID as the second thing. And let's take a look at articles API. When I want to add an article, it takes in an article object, which I'm passing in, but it also takes in a token. So I'm going to add a second argument. And then I'm going to add the authorization to the token. Let's see if this does anything for us. We'll start over right at the beginning. Log in, john@doe.com, open Sesame. I print out that I have the token, go to add an article, I still got that token. Submit it, and then it looks like it was successfully submitted because I go down to the bottom, there's that nonsensical thing that I just typed in just right now, which is pretty cool. Now, so again, we've created the ability to log in, only the ability to add an article if you're logged in, if you have a token that you're passing with it. Let's change the navigation at this point so that you can't even visit this part. This thing won't show up unless you're logged in. So I know that AppNav is the thing that handles all of my navigation at the very top, so I'm just going to jump in there really quick. And AppNav needs to know whether or not the user is logged in. So I'm just going to say, I'm just going to pass it in, user equals this.state.user. From here, I'm going to jump inside of this, and I'm going to rewrite a few things over here. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to copy and paste it. It's going to look a little strange, so we'll read it together. Now, this looks like nonsensical, like why would anyone write code in such a way? And the reason is you cannot actually do like if-else statements, but you can do ternary operators. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to display the navigation that I created up here. This is actually just called sections now. I'm going to say, is there a user? Was there a user passed down? If so, I'm going to say, I'm going to create a link to add an article and a link to log out. Otherwise, this colon here, I'm going to create just a link to log in. Refresh the page over here. Looks like I'm currently logged out, so I'm going to log in. You can kind of see there's no more create an article ability. So I'm going to do john@doe.com, open Sesame, refresh, and then I have that create a new article and log out. I could do some weird formatting over here, but I do have the ability to have these two over here. Now I can create an article, and I can also, I don't have the code for logout yet, but you can kind of see I can only create an article if I'm actually logged in at this point, and I still have access to that user's ID. The final thing we need to do is create a logout. So I'm just going to create a path called logout, and let's do another const render logout. First things first, I need to reset the state. When I log out, I want to get rid of the state. So I have user is going to equal null. And then from there, I'm just going to redirect. So I think it's just redirect to slash. I think that's it. Do I have the redirect library? I do not. So I'm just going to import redirect from React. Is it React router? Yeah, it's React router. Did I mess something up? Is it 2 equals? Yes. Nope, still something broken. Where else do I redirect? I believe it's login. That's at this step history push. Where is my other redirect? So return redirect. Okay, and then I'm going to vendor logout page. All right, it says render logout page is not defined. It's because I called it render logout. Compile it successfully. Let's try it one more time. So everything's going to load up right over here. Go back to the main page. I'm going to log myself in. John@doe.com. Open Sesame. I have access to my entire user. I'm going to create a new article called Apples Are Better Than Grapes. And you can kind of see apples are better than grapes over here. I'm going to log out. And then because I'm logged out, they cleared my session. I'm no longer got the ability to create an article or have logged out, and I'm here back on the home page. I still got that apples are better than grapes. So just to recap what we did.
I have a question. Why can't you do if statements?
Why can't I do if statements? So you're talking about the login page. Nope, you're talking about AppNav. Why do I have to write it like this and not a bunch of if statements? So just so we're clear, this question mark and this colon, it goes if this thing, then execute this code. Else, execute that code. That's the way it works. So it's if, and then this statement, if this, then that, else, do this. I wish I could tell you a better answer than it just doesn't work.
Okay.
Like I wish I could just go like if this dot props user, I'm going to execute this thing over here. You would think this would work. Else, I'm just gonna cut this out for a second. So we're in agreement that those two things are the same thing, right? Everything blows up. I have no idea why. It's just that's the way that JSX works, embedded JavaScript works. It's either I'm going to evaluate, like you just can't have if statements.
So no if statements in
No
JSX.
No if statements in JSX at all. Ternary operators are okay, and this is also okay, like true and hello. If I go here, I go to the login. You see that hello that just shows up? Like this is another way to get it in there, but there are no if statements allowed. So it's either going to be ternary operators or these. It's like remember from week 1, you're happy and your data's happy kind of thing. So true always evaluates to true, and this always evaluates to true because it's just a string. Any other questions?